Before this audiobook truly begins, I want you to do something rare. Put your ego down, because the moment you defend your old thinking, you lose the chance to change your life. Deep breath. Do not listen casually. Do not listen while scrolling. Do not listen like entertainment. Listen like your future depends on it, because it does. This is not motivation. This is not positivity. This is not a success story designed to make you feel good and stay the same. This audiobook is a mirror, and most people hate mirrors. And most people hate mirrors. Because mirrors don't lie. Let me ask you something. And don't answer quickly. Why do some people struggle for money? Their entire lives, even though they work hard? Why do some people pray every day, yet stay broke? Why do people with degrees, skills, and intelligence live paycheck to paycheck? And why do some people with less education, less talent, less qualification build wealth effortlessly? This question destroys comfort, and that's why most people never ask it. They say, it's the economy. They say, it's inflation. They say, it's corruption. They say, I wasn't lucky. These answers protect your ego. They protect your excuses. They do not protect your future. The answer is not education. The answer is not hard work. The answer is not your boss. The answer is thinking. Your thinking. And if your thinking is broken, your income will always be limited. Your bank account is not controlled by your job. It is controlled by your subconscious habits. Your beliefs about money, your emotional reactions to money, your fear of money, and if your thinking is poor, money will never stay with you. You can earn more. You can get raises. You can even win money. But poor thinking will find a way to lose it again. Poor thinking is invisible. It feels normal. It sounds logical. It feels responsible. That's why it's deadly. This audiobook was not created for dreamers. It was created for people who are tired. Tired of trying. Tired of hoping. Tired of starting again. Tired of being told, just be patient. You don't need another side hustle. You don't need another YouTube hack. You don't need another motivational speech. You need a new operating system for your mind, because the same thinking that created your financial life, pause, cannot change it. Poor thinking is a prison, but not with bars. It's a prison made of habits, beliefs, fears, excuses. They wake up. They work. They spend. They repeat. Year after year, dream after dream, and slowly, hope dies. No school teaches you how to think about money. They teach you how to follow rules, how to obey authority, how to survive, but not how to build, not how to grow, not how to question. A system built on poor thinking creates workers, not wealth builders. Most people are not poor because of circumstances. They are poor because of mental habits. They refuse to question. If this makes you uncomfortable, good. If this triggers you, even better. Because comfort is the enemy of growth, and comfort is why you're still broke. If you stop listening halfway, nothing will change. If you listen emotionally, nothing will change. But if you listen honestly, your relationship with money will never be the same again. If you stay till the very end, you will start recognizing poor thinking in yourself, and that recognition is the beginning of freedom. We will expose the first and most dangerous form of poor thinking. The thinking that feels responsible, sounds intelligent, but silently destroys wealth. Most people never escape it. Most people never escape it, not because they are weak, not because they are lazy, but because they are loyal to a way of thinking that is quietly destroying them. They defend it. They justify it. They call it reality. And the moment you defend your old thinking, you lock your future inside your past. Here is the uncomfortable part. Poor thinking does not look poor. It looks sensible. It looks safe. It looks responsible. It says things like, be realistic. Don't take risks. Money is hard to earn. People like us don't get rich. Be grateful with what you have. These sentences sound wise. They sound mature. They sound intelligent, but they are silent wealth killers. They slowly train your brain to accept limitation as normal and survival as success. And once that happens, you stop aiming for freedom and start praying for comfort. This audiobook is here to interrupt that pattern, not gently, not politely, but honestly. Because your life will not change with soft lies. It only changes when hard truth hits you in the exact place you were avoiding. Understand this clearly. Money does not leave people randomly. It leaves people whose thinking cannot handle it. That is why some people earn more and still feel broke. That is why some people get opportunities and still stay stuck. That is why some people touch success but cannot hold it. They change their income but never change their identity. And money always follows identity. If deep inside, you see yourself as someone who struggles, money will visit you, but it will never live with you. If deep inside, you believe wealth is for others, you will unconsciously push it away every single time it comes close. This is not psychology theory. This is observable reality. Look around you. The same people stay broke. The same people stay stressed. The same people keep repeating the same year with a different calendar. Not because life hates them, but because their thinking keeps choosing familiarity over freedom. And here is the line most people don't want to hear. Hard work does not break poverty. Right thinking does. Hard work without direction creates exhaustion. Hard work without clarity creates frustration. Creates frustration. Hard work without mindset creates lifelong struggle. That is why this audiobook will not teach you how to hustle more. It will teach you why your hustle is not working. It will not give you shortcuts. It will remove blind spots. It will not make you feel powerful instantly. It will make you aware permanently. And awareness is dangerous to the old life. Because once you see your poor thinking clearly, you cannot unsee it. You will hear it in your own words. You will catch it in your own decisions. You will recognize it. When fear pretends to be logic, in that moment is where change begins. Not loud change, not dramatic change, but irreversible change. So listen carefully, not to agree, not to disagree, but to observe yourself. Because the enemy was never money. The enemy was the thinking you thought was protecting you. And in the next part, we will break down the first mental pattern that almost everyone is proud of and that almost everyone pays for with their entire life. That is where real discomfort begins. And that is where real freedom starts. Now listen carefully to this. Most people believe their problem is money, but money is never the real problem. The real problem is the way money is seen, the way money is felt, the way money is emotionally experienced. Some people feel fear when they think about money. Some feel guilt. Some feel stress. Some feel shame. And whatever emotion controls your money will also control your future. If money makes you anxious, you will avoid it. If money makes you feel unworthy, you will push it away. If money makes you feel powerful, you will protect it. You will grow it. You will respect it. This is why two people can earn the same amount, and one grows rich, while the other stays trapped. Because money does not respond to effort. Money responds to thinking. Here is something no one warned you about. Poor thinking is not loud. It does not shout. It whispers. It whispers comfort. It whispers safety. It whispers excuses that sound intelligent. It tells you to wait. It tells you to settle. It tells you to avoid risk and call it wisdom. And slowly, without you realizing, your world becomes smaller. Your dreams shrink. Your courage weakens. Your hunger fades. You stop asking big questions and start adjusting to small lives. That is how poverty survives. Not through lack of opportunity, but through lack of awareness. Most people are not trapped by money. They are trapped by beliefs they never chose. Beliefs inherited from parents, from society, from fear-driven advice, from people who never escape themselves. And the most dangerous part? Those beliefs feel like your own thoughts. You trust them. You listen to them. You build your life around them. This audiobook exists to separate you from those thoughts, to show you which thoughts are truly yours and which ones were planted to keep you small. Because the moment you realize that your thinking can be questioned, everything changes. You stop blaming the world. You stop waiting for permission. You stop asking why life is unfair and start asking better questions. Questions that create movement. Questions that create power. Questions that create wealth. This is not about becoming greedy. This is about becoming free, free from fear-based decisions, free from survival thinking, free from the belief that struggle is your destiny. You were not born to just survive. You were trained to, and training can be unlearned, but only if you are honest enough to look at your own mind without defending it. That is what this audiobook demands. Honesty, self-awareness, courage, not motivation, not hype, not fake confidence, real inner work. Because once your thinking shifts, your actions follow. And when actions change, money has no choice but to respond. This is where the journey truly begins. Not with money, but with the mind that handles it. And in the next section, we go deeper into the first thinking pattern. That looks like responsibility, sounds like maturity, but keeps millions trapped in average lives. If you recognize it inside yourself, do not run from it. That recognition is the door. And beyond that door, nothing stays the same. Stay with this, because what you are about to hear is not something you usually notice. Most people think their financial life is shaped by big decisions, jobs, businesses, investments. That is a lie. Your financial life is shaped by small thoughts you repeat every day without questioning them. Thoughts you never challenge. Thoughts you assume are facts. Thoughts that quietly decide how far you are allowed to go. If you are listening right now and something inside you feels uneasy, that is not fear. That is awareness waking up. Do not ignore it. Most people do. They feel uncomfortable and they distract themselves. They scroll. They skip. They move on. And their life stays exactly the same. If you stay with me, you are already doing something rare, because poor thinking survives only when it is not observed. Here is something important. Your thinking was not created by you. It was downloaded from family conversations, from society's expectations, from warnings disguised as advice. Play safe. Don't dream too big. Money changes people. Focus on security. These ideas were not meant to harm you, but they were never meant to make you wealthy either. And when these ideas repeat long enough, they become your inner voice. That voice feels like logic. It feels like maturity. It feels like intelligence, but it is just conditioning. If this is making sense to you, keep listening, because clarity like this does not come often. Most people spend their entire lives inside a mental boundary they never knew existed. They call it reality. They call it responsibility. They call it adulthood. But reality is flexible, and responsibility without awareness is just another cage. Think about this carefully. Why do people fear losing money more than they desire gaining freedom? Why do people accept years of stress for a monthly salary without questioning the trade? Why does comfort feel safer than possibility? Because poor thinking teaches you to protect what you have, even if what you have is slowly killing your potential. If this line hit you, do not rush past it. This audiobook is not here to rush you. It is here to expose patterns. Patterns that repeat in your choices. Patterns that repeat in your habits. Patterns that repeat in your bank account. Once you see a pattern, you cannot blame luck anymore. And that is scary, because blaming luck is easy. Blaming the economy is easy. Blaming others is comfortable. Taking responsibility for thinking is uncomfortable. That is why few people do it. And that is why few people escape. Let me tell you something clearly. You do not need to become smarter. You do not need more information. You do not need another strategy. You need subtraction. You need to remove thinking that does not serve you, beliefs that keep you small, fears that pretend to protect you, rules you never agreed to consciously. If you are still listening, it means one thing. Some part of you already knows that your life can be different. That part is quiet. It is often ignored, but it is intelligent. This audiobook speaks to that part, not to excite you, not to motivate you, but to wake you up. Because once you wake up, you cannot go back to sleep. Your decisions change. Your tolerance for average drops. Your excuses stop sounding convincing. And when that happens, money is no longer the enemy. It becomes a tool that listens only to clear thinking. We are still in the beginning, and already your mind is being challenged. If you feel resistance, good. That resistance is the doorway. In the next section, we will break open the first thinking pattern that almost everyone respects, almost everyone follows, and almost everyone pays for with a limited life. Do not miss it, because once you recognize it, you will start seeing it everywhere, in yourself, in others, in society, and from that moment, there is no return to to unconscious living. This is where the real audiobook begins. If you are still here, it means something inside you is refusing to settle. Most people quit at this point, not because they don't understand, but because understanding forces responsibility, and responsibility is heavier than excuses. Let me tell you something very few people admit. People are not afraid of failure. They are afraid of discovering that their life could have been different, because that discovery hurts more than staying stuck. Staying stuck is familiar. Staying stuck is predictable. Staying stuck feels safe. Poor thinking survives because it promises safety. It says, at least this pain is known. At least this struggle is normal. At least I'm not alone. And slowly, you start bonding with limitation. You defend it. You justify it. You even feel proud of it. That is why some people say, I don't care about money. What they really mean is, I'm tired of feeling powerless around it. That sentence is not wisdom. It is emotional protection. If this sounds too real, good. That means you are listening properly. Here is another uncomfortable truth. Most people do not lack opportunity. They lack permission. Permission to think differently. Permission to want more. Permission to outgrow their environment. And because they never give themselves that permission, they wait for society to approve. But society never approves freedom. It only tolerates conformity. That is why this audiobook will feel isolating at times, because growth always separates before it elevates. If you continue listening, you will start noticing something strange. Conversations will sound shallow. Advice will sound recycled. Excuses will sound obvious. Not because you are better, but because you are more aware. Awareness is lonely in the beginning, but it is powerful in the long run. Let this sink in. Money does not reward morality. Money does not reward effort. Money rewards clarity. Clarity of direction. Clarity of decision. Clarity of identity. That is why people with chaos in their mind experience chaos in their finances. And people with disciplined thinking experience growth. Even in difficult conditions. This audiobook is not here to make you hate your past. It is here to disconnect you from it. To show you that your past thinking worked for survival. But survival thinking cannot build freedom. If you are still listening, you are already stepping out of survival mode. And that step is invisible to others, but life-changing for you. In a few moments, we will move from awareness to exposure. We will name the first mental habit that almost everyone follows without realizing how expensive it is. When you hear it, you might want to deny it. You might want to argue. You might want to say, this is just how life works. Do not rush to reject it, because the habits that control your life never ask for your agreement. They only ask for your repetition. And once repetition stops, control breaks. Stay with this. We are about to enter the part of the audiobook where comfort ends and clarity begins. This is still the introduction, and already your thinking is shifting. That is not accidental. That is preparation, because what comes next will not work unless you are fully present. And if you are, this will be the moment. You later look back at and realize this is where everything started to change. Let me begin with a question that almost no one ever asks. What if the reason you are struggling financially is not outside you at all? What if it's not the economy? Not inflation? Not your job? Not your boss? Not your family background? What if the real enemy has been living quietly inside your own thinking this entire time? Most people spend their lives fighting visible enemies. They fight bills. They fight deadlines. They fight competition. They fight circumstances. But they never question the invisible force that decides how they react to all of it. That force is thinking, not intelligence, not education, not talent. Thinking, the kind of thinking you repeat so often that it feels like truth. This chapter is about that enemy, the one you never saw coming, the one that feels like it's protecting you while it slowly keeps you exactly where you are. There was a man once, let's call him Daniel. Daniel was not lazy. He woke up early. He worked long hours. He paid his bills on time. He avoided trouble. He did everything society told him a responsible adult should do. And yet every month, his bank account told the same story. Barely enough. Always tight. Always waiting for the next paycheck. Daniel didn't think he was failing. He thought this was just life. That belief alone controlled his entire future. Because when struggle feels normal, freedom feels unrealistic. Daniel believed money was hard. Not because he studied it deeply, but because he heard it repeatedly. From parents, from coworkers, from news headlines, from people who had also never escaped. And repetition is powerful. When an idea repeats long enough, the brain stops questioning it. It accepts it. That is how poor thinking is born, not as stupidity, but as familiarity. Poor thinking does not announce itself. It doesn't say, "I am here to ruin your life." It sounds calm, reasonable, adult. It says things like, "Be safe. Don't risk too much. At least you have a job. Money isn't everything. People like us don't get rich." Daniel believed all of this, not because he was weak, but because these thoughts felt responsible. And responsibility is respected. That is why poor thinking survives for generations. It wears the mask of maturity. Here is something uncomfortable but true. Most people don't struggle with money because they make terrible decisions. They struggle because they never allow themselves to imagine better ones. Their thinking sets invisible limits. Limits on income, limits on ambition, limits on possibility. And once a limit feels real, the mind will defend it, even when it hurts. Daniel defended his limits. When someone talked about business, he said it was risky. When someone talked about investing, he said it was gambling. When someone talked about freedom, he said it was unrealistic. On the surface, he sounded logical, but underneath, there was fear. Fear pretending to be wisdom. This is how poor thinking works. It never says, "I'm afraid." It says, "I'm being smart." It never says, "I don't believe in myself." It says, "I'm being realistic." And realism, when built on fear, becomes a prison. Daniel never felt trapped. That is the most dangerous part. A prison you don't recognize is the hardest one to escape. Here is a truth most people never hear. Money does not respond to effort. Money responds to perception. How you see money decides how it behaves in your life. If you see money as dangerous, you will avoid it. If you see money as stressful, you will rush to get rid of it. If you see money as something meant for others, you will never feel comfortable holding it. Daniel earned money, but he never felt safe with it. So it never stayed. This chapter is not here to blame you. It is here to reveal something that was never explained. You were taught how to work. You were taught how to obey. You were taught how to survive. You were never taught how to think about wealth. And untrained thinking always defaults to fear. Fear of loss, fear of judgment, fear of failure. And fear is expensive. If any part of this feels familiar, that is not coincidence. That is recognition. This is not the moment to fix anything. This is not the moment to force change. This is the moment where something becomes visible. Because once you see a thought clearly, it can no longer control you silently. And that awareness, there is a specific kind of thinking that keeps people stuck for decades. It doesn't feel dangerous. It doesn't feel foolish. In fact, it feels mature. This thinking sounds careful. It sounds disciplined. It sounds like something a good adult would say. And that is exactly why it is so powerful. Most people believe poor thinking looks reckless. They imagine it as laziness, ignorance, or bad behavior. But the most destructive thinking rarely looks irresponsible. It looks responsible. It says things like, "I'm just being careful. I can't afford to mess up. I have responsibilities. Now is not the right time. I'll do it later." This kind of thinking does not push you backward. It simply holds you still. And over time, stillness becomes a slow decline. Let's go back to Daniel. Daniel believed he was doing everything right. He avoided debt. He avoided risk. He avoided mistakes. He also avoided growth. Every decision Daniel made was based on one question. What is the safest option? That question followed him everywhere. When choosing a job, he chose stability over learning. When choosing how to spend money, he chose comfort over leverage. When choosing whether to try something new, he chose familiarity over possibility. None of these choices felt wrong. Each one felt reasonable. That is the trap. Poor thinking does not ruin your life overnight. It ruins it politely. It ruins it one safe decision at a time. Daniel told himself he was protecting his future. But in reality, he was protecting his fears. Here is something rarely said out loud. Safety and growth almost never live in the same place. Growth requires uncertainty. Learning requires mistakes. Wealth requires exposure to discomfort. But responsible thinking, as society defines it, avoids all three. From a young age, most people are rewarded for compliance, not curiosity. For obedience, not initiative. for staying in line, not stepping forward. So when adulthood arrives, the habit is already built. Stay safe. Don't stand out. Don't fail publicly. Don't try what might not work. Daniel did not consciously choose this mindset. It was installed slowly, by watching adults around him, by hearing warnings instead of encouragement, by seeing risk punished more than inaction. And because this thinking kept him employed and out of trouble, he assumed it must also lead to success. But survival thinking and wealth thinking are not the same. Survival thinking asks, how do I avoid loss? Wealth thinking asks, how do I increase value? Daniel's thinking never asked about value. It asked about safety, and safety has a hidden cost. When you prioritize safety above all else, you begin to shrink your world. You stop asking bigger questions. You stop imagining different outcomes. You stop believing your actions can change much. Slowly, your identity changes. You no longer see yourself as someone who creates outcomes. You see yourself as someone who reacts to them. Daniel reacted to life. He waited for raises. He waited for opportunities. He waited for permission. And waiting feels responsible. But waiting quietly teaches the mind something dangerous. That control lives outside you. Over time, Daniel stopped expecting change. Not because he gave up, but because expectation felt childish. Hope felt immature. Ambition felt risky. Desire felt selfish. So he learned to lower them. This is another form of poor thinking no one warns you about. Lowering expectations feels like wisdom, but it slowly disconnects you from possibility. When you expect less, you attempt less. When you attempt less, you become less. Not suddenly, gradually. Daniel's life didn't collapse. It stabilized. And that stability became the ceiling he never broke. Here is the most uncomfortable truth of this chapter. Many people are not afraid of failing. They are afraid of being seen trying. Trying publicly risks embarrassment. Trying seriously risks disappointment. Trying fully risks discovering your limits. So responsible thinking steps in and says, let's not rush. Let's not get our hopes up. Let's not be unrealistic. And slowly, the fire dies. Daniel told himself he was content. But contentment built on fear is not peace. It is surrender disguised as maturity. Money responds to bold clarity, not cautious comfort. Opportunities respond to action, not intention. And growth responds to pressure, not protection. Daniel protected himself from discomfort so well that he also protected himself from expansion. This chapter is not asking you to be reckless. It is asking you to be honest. Honest about which thoughts are truly protecting you and which ones are simply keeping you small. Responsible thinking should build a future, not freeze it. If your thinking only helps you maintain, but never helps you multiply, it is time to question it. Because responsibility without vision becomes a beautifully decorated cage. And cages don't look like prisons. When you've lived inside them long enough, not all danger comes from taking risks. Some danger comes from never taking any at all. And in the next chapter, we will confront the belief that keeps people waiting their entire lives for the right time that never arrives. There is a phrase that sounds harmless. It sounds thoughtful. It sounds patient. I'll do it when the time is right. Most people believe this sentence protects them from mistakes. In reality, it protects them from movement. The idea of the right time is one of the most convincing lies poor thinking ever created, because it doesn't say no. It says later, and later feels reasonable. Daniel used this phrase often, not dramatically, not emotionally, casually. When he thought about learning a new skill, he told himself he'd start when work slowed down. When he thought about saving more aggressively, he told himself he'd begin after his income increased. When he thought about changing direction entirely, he told himself he needed more information first. More clarity, more certainty, more time. Years passed this way. Nothing bad happened. But nothing meaningful changed either. That is the danger of waiting. Waiting does not feel like failure. It feels like preparation. But preparation without action slowly trains the mind to avoid action altogether. Here is something most people never realize. The right time is a feeling, not a moment. And feelings follow action, and they do not precede it. Daniel believed confidence came first. He believed security came first. He believed certainty came first. So he waited for them. What he didn't know was that confidence is built by doing. Security is built by adapting, and certainty is built only in hindsight. The mind prefers guarantees. Life does not offer them. So when the mind demands certainty before action, it unknowingly chooses stagnation. Daniel told himself he was being patient. But patience, when mixed with fear, becomes procrastination with good manners. He watched others move forward and assumed they knew something he didn't, that they had better timing, better resources, better luck. What he didn't see was that most of them started unsure, unprepared, and uncomfortable. They didn't wait for the right time. They moved and adjusted as they went. Daniel's thinking told him movement without certainty was dangerous, but staying still felt safe. Here is the truth this chapter wants you to hear clearly. Staying still is not neutral. It is a decision, and every decision has a cost. The cost of waiting is invisible at first. It shows up quietly, in skills never learned, in chances never taken, in versions of yourself that never get a chance to exist. Daniel didn't miss one big opportunity. He missed hundreds of small ones. A conversation he didn't start, an idea he didn't explore, a risk he delayed just long enough for fear to settle in. Over time, his identity shifted. He became someone who almost did things, someone who was about to start, someone who was planning a different life. And planning feels productive, but planning without execution slowly erodes self-trust. Each delay sends a quiet message to the mind. I don't follow through. After enough repetitions, the mind believes it. Then even small actions begin to feel heavy. This is how people end up exhausted without ever truly trying. The illusion of the right time also hides another fear, the fear of responsibility. When you wait, failure can still be blamed on circumstances. But when you act, results belong to you. Success becomes your responsibility. Failure becomes your lesson. And that level of ownership feels risky. So the mind chooses delay. Daniel didn't fear effort. He feared accountability. Accountability removes excuses. It forces honesty. And honesty can be uncomfortable. This chapter is not telling you to rush blindly. It is telling you to stop negotiating with hesitation. The right time does not arrive. It is created by action, by imperfect starts, by movement without guarantees. People who change their lives do not feel ready. They feel committed. Commitment is different from confidence. Confidence comes later. Daniel eventually realized something painful but freeing. Every year he waited for the right time. He became less prepared, not more, because readiness is a muscle, and unused muscles weaken. This chapter ends with a simple realization. If you are waiting to feel certain before you act, you will wait forever. And if you are waiting forever, life will move on without asking your permission. There is a belief so deeply accepted that almost no one questions it. If I just work harder, things will eventually change. This belief sounds noble. It sounds disciplined. It sounds honest. And it quietly keeps millions of people stuck. Daniel believed this with his whole heart. He didn't avoid effort. He didn't avoid responsibility. He didn't avoid long hours. In fact, effort was the one thing he trusted completely. Whenever money felt tight, he worked more. Whenever stress increased, he pushed harder. Whenever progress felt slow, he told himself this was just the price of adulthood. He was always tired, always occupied, always doing something, and yet nothing meaningful improved. That confusion slowly turned into frustration. Because deep down, Daniel believed effort guaranteed progress. And when progress didn't come, he assumed the answer must be even more effort. This is where poor thinking becomes dangerous. Hard work is not the enemy. But blind hard work is. Here is a truth rarely spoken. Movement is not the same as direction. You can move constantly and still remain in the same place. Daniel's days were full, but his life was static. He confused exhaustion with advancement. Society reinforced this confusion. People praised him for being busy, for being reliable, for always showing up. Busyness earned respect, but it did not earn freedom. Daniel never asked a critical question. Is what I'm doing building leverage or just consuming time? Time is the most expensive currency you have. Once spent, it never returns. Yet Daniel traded it generously for tasks that paid him only once. Hour for money, day for paycheck, year for survival. This system worked, but only at keeping him exactly where he started. Working harder within a broken structure does not fix the structure. It only strengthens the cage. Daniel believed that if he proved himself enough, someone would eventually notice. Promote him, reward him, save him. That belief delayed his independence, because reliance on permission keeps power outside you. Here is the uncomfortable shift that changes everything. Wealth grows from value, not effort. Effort is personal. Value is scalable. You can only work so many hours, but value can multiply beyond you. Daniel's work was useful, but it was replaceable. And replaceable work rarely leads to abundance. This realization hurt. Because Daniel took pride in being dependable, in being consistent, in being needed. But being needed is not the same as being valuable. The system rewards results, not sacrifice. And sacrifice without strategy leads to burnout, not growth. Daniel didn't need to quit working hard. He needed to stop worshiping it. Hard work should be a tool, not an identity. When effort becomes your identity, you stop asking whether it's effective. You just keep pushing. That is how people become busy for decades, without ever becoming free. Another trap hid inside Daniel's thinking. He believed rest was weakness, so he never paused long enough to evaluate direction. Reflection felt unproductive. Thinking felt indulgent. But without reflection, repetition takes over. Daniel repeated days, repeated months, repeated years, and repetition without intention becomes a routine that slowly erases possibility. Here is something most people never consider. If working harder were enough, the hardest workers would be the wealthiest. They are not. The world is full of exhausted people who did everything right and still feel stuck. This chapter is not an attack on effort. It is an invitation to upgrade it. Effort multiplied by clarity creates momentum. Effort multiplied by leverage creates freedom. Effort without direction creates fatigue. Daniel began to notice something subtle. The people who seemed calm about money were not the ones working the longest hours. They were the ones who understood where their effort went. They chose where to apply energy. They chose what to build instead of what to endure. That difference changed everything. This chapter ends with a simple truth. Being busy can feel productive, but productivity without purpose is just exhaustion with a schedule. Let's talk about something people protect more fiercely than money. Comfort. Not happiness. Not freedom. Comfort. Comfort feels warm. It feels familiar. It feels safe. And it quietly steals your future. Daniel didn't chase comfort on purpose. He just stopped challenging it. He liked knowing what his days would look like. He liked knowing what his paycheck would be. He liked knowing what was expected of him. Nothing surprised him anymore. And at first, that felt like stability. But stability slowly turned into numbness. Here's the part no one warns you about. Comfort doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like relief. Relief from uncertainty. Relief from judgment. Relief from the risk of being wrong. Daniel told himself he was at peace. But peace built on avoidance is not peace. It's quiet fear. He avoided conversations that made him uncomfortable. He avoided ideas that challenged his identity. He avoided dreams that demanded change. Not because he didn't want more, but because wanting more meant admitting that his current life wasn't enough, and that admission felt dangerous. Comfort convinces you to protect what you have, even when what you have is slowly draining you. Daniel stayed in situations he had outgrown, because leaving felt irresponsible. He stayed silent when he had ideas, because speaking up felt risky. He stayed small because being seen felt exposed. Comfort whispered, "Don't rock the boat." And Daniel listened. Here's something deeply human. Most people don't fear change itself. They fear losing their identity. Who am I if I try and fail? Who am I if I want more than what my family had? Who am I if I step outside the role people expect me to play? Comfort answers those questions by saying, just stay the same. But staying the same is not neutral. Life moves forward whether you do or not. Daniel noticed something painful one night. He wasn't unhappy, but he wasn't alive either. His days passed smoothly, yet nothing stayed with him. No excitement, no momentum, no growth, just repetition. That's when he realized something important. Comfort doesn't feel like pain. It feels like sleep. And sleep is dangerous. When your life is the thing drifting away, people romanticize comfort. They call it balance. They call it contentment. But real contentment doesn't require suppression. It doesn't require pretending you don't want more. Daniel had wants. He just learned to ignore them. And ignored desires don't disappear. They turn into frustration. That frustration showed up quietly, in impatience, in irritation, in jealousy he didn't want to admit. Whenever he saw someone living freely, part of him felt inspired. Another part felt angry. Not at them, at himself. Because deep down he knew the truth. Comfort was not protecting him. It was delaying him. Here's the honest part most people avoid. Growth feels uncomfortable because it demands honesty. Honesty about your limits. Honesty about your excuses. Honesty about the fact that comfort has become more important than progress. Daniel wasn't lazy. He was comfortable. And comfort is far more dangerous than laziness. Because it doesn't look like a problem. This chapter isn't telling you to abandon stability overnight. It's asking you to question what you're protecting and what it's costing you. Because every time you choose comfort over growth, you trade a future version of yourself for temporary ease. And that trade happens quietly, daily, without drama. Daniel didn't change everything at once. He just stopped pretending comfort was peace. That single shift changed how he saw his life. This chapter ends with a truth that might sting a little. If your life feels calm but unfulfilled, you are not at peace. There's a fear that doesn't look like fear. It looks like being well-behaved. It looks like being grateful. It looks like not complaining. But underneath all of that is silence. Daniel learned early not to question too much. Not because anyone sat him down and said, "Don't question life," but because every time someone questioned too much, they were labeled difficult, unrealistic, negative, ungrateful. So Daniel learned a quiet rule. Keep your head down. And that rule followed him into adulthood. He didn't question how money worked. He didn't question why effort didn't match reward. He didn't question systems that exhausted him. He adapted instead. Adaptation feels intelligent, but constant adaptation to broken systems slowly breaks the person. Daniel told himself, "This is just how things are." That sentence is one of the most dangerous thoughts a human can have, because the moment you accept how things are as permanent, your imagination shuts down, and imagination is where change begins. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most systems don't need you to believe in them. They just need you not to question them. Questioning creates friction. Friction creates awareness. Awareness creates choice. And choice threatens control. So people are trained, gently, subtly, to stay quiet. Daniel didn't feel controlled. He felt polite. He didn't feel oppressed. He felt responsible. He didn't feel silenced. He felt mature. That's how the trap works. Questioning doesn't mean rebelling. It means thinking. But many people confuse thinking for danger. Daniel avoided questions like, why does my income have a ceiling? Why does my time feel owned? Why do the rules never seem to change, only tighten? Those questions felt risky. Because once you ask them, you can't unsee the answers. And unseeing is more comfortable. Daniel noticed something strange. The people who seemed most at peace were not the ones who accepted everything. They were the ones who questioned early. They didn't blindly follow paths. They examined them. They didn't reject responsibility. They rejected unquestioned obedience. Daniel had been loyal to jobs, to routines, to expectations. But loyalty without alignment turns into self-betrayal. He stayed silent in meetings. Even when he saw better ways, he accepted rules. Even when they made no sense, he nodded along. Even when something inside him disagreed, that inner disagreement didn't disappear. It accumulated. And accumulated silence turns into resentment. Resentment toward work. Resentment toward authority. Resentment toward life itself. But resentment never solves anything when the source isn't named. The source wasn't the system. It was Daniel's refusal to question it. Here's a hard but freeing realization. Questioning does not make you ungrateful. It makes you conscious. You can appreciate what you have and still want more. You can respect structure and still redesign it for yourself. Daniel finally asked himself one honest question. What if the problem isn't that I'm incapable, but that I've been playing by rules that don't reward me? That question didn't give him answers immediately, but it gave him something more important. Permission. Permission to think independently. Permission to doubt familiar beliefs. Permission to explore without apologizing. And once permission exists, change becomes possible. This chapter ends with a quiet shift. You don't escape poverty by fighting the world. You escape it by questioning the thinking that told you not to question at all. Most people live their lives waiting for someone to rescue them. A boss, a mentor, a friend, a partner, a lucky break. Daniel was no different. He thought that if he just worked hard enough, if he just followed the rules, if he just avoided mistakes, someone would notice. Someone would reward him. Someone would finally give him permission to succeed. And for years he waited. He worked extra hours. He helped colleagues. He avoided risks. He followed all the rules. He played by the system. But no one came. Not because he was undeserving. Not because he was unlucky. Not because the world was against him. The truth is far more uncomfortable. No one is coming to save you. No one owes you security. No one is responsible for your dreams. No one is coming to hand you the life you want. And realizing this is terrifying, Daniel felt it slowly at first. Then all at once, he looked around at his coworkers, his friends, even his family, and he noticed the same pattern. They were waiting too, waiting for opportunity, waiting for luck, waiting for someone to notice them. Waiting feels safe. It feels comforting. It feels responsible. But waiting is also invisible prison bars. Because while you wait, life moves on. The world doesn't pause. Time doesn't pause. Every day spent waiting is a day that will never return. Every hour spent hoping someone will save you is an hour that could have been spent saving. Daniel had spent decades waiting, waiting to be ready, waiting to feel confident, waiting to feel certain, waiting for someone else to approve his next move. And that waiting cost him more than money. It cost him experiences. It cost him growth. It cost him belief in his own ability to change his life. Here's the hardest truth of all. People don't fail because the world is cruel. They fail because they're waiting for the world to be kind. And kindness isn't coming. Daniel finally understood. If he wanted a different life, he had to take it himself. No one else would give it to him. No one else would make it happen. No one else would fight for his freedom. That realization is shocking, even painful, because for most of your life, you've been trained to believe that help is always around the corner, that if you just do the right things, someone will notice. But the truth is, the world doesn't notice everyone. The world only rewards action, courage, persistence. And if you wait for permission, you will wait forever. Daniel started small. He didn't quit his job immediately. He didn't make a huge, risky investment. He didn't announce a major life change. He started by noticing how he thought, noticing how he avoided responsibility disguised as caution, noticing which choices were truly his, and which choices he was making for others. Awareness was the first act of rebellion, and rebellion is uncomfortable because when you finally realize no one is coming to save you, all excuses disappear, all comfort disappears, and suddenly the responsibility belongs to you alone. Daniel felt fear at first, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of making mistakes. But he also felt something else, power. Because the moment you stop waiting for someone else to save you, you regain control of your life. You realize that freedom is not something handed out. It is something claimed, something built, something fought for. Daniel realized that waiting had been a choice to let life happen to him instead of letting him happen to life. And choices like that, when compounded over years, become invisible chains. He started noticing little things. How often he said yes to things he didn't want to do. How often he avoided saying no just to keep peace. How often he let others decide what was possible for him. All of it added up. He realized that the people he admired most, the ones who seemed free, successful, and fulfilled, they had stopped waiting. They didn't have perfect lives. They weren't fearless. They weren't protected by luck or timing. They had made a decision. I am responsible for my life. No one else is. And once you make that decision, everything changes. Because suddenly fear stops being an excuse. Fear becomes a tool. Daniel started acting. Not wildly, not recklessly, but intentionally. He didn't wait for the perfect plan. He didn't wait for perfect circumstances. He started small, but he started. He invested a little time each day in learning. He invested a little money each month in himself. He spoke up when he had ideas. He said no to things that drained him. He started questioning systems and habits he had blindly followed for decades. And slowly, the world began to respond differently. Because life always responds to action. It always rewards courage. It always moves toward those who are willing to take responsibility. Daniel didn't become rich overnight. He didn't escape struggle instantly, but he began moving in the right direction. And movement, after years of waiting, felt like freedom. Here's the lesson. Waiting is safe. Being cautious feels responsible. But nothing grows in safety for too long. Waiting guarantees one thing, stagnation. But taking responsibility, and even imperfectly, guarantees growth. This chapter is not meant to make you feel guilty. It is meant to wake you up. Because the moment you accept that no one is coming to save you, you reclaim your life. You stop blaming circumstances. You stop relying on luck. You stop hoping for permission. Everything becomes yours to claim. Everything becomes your responsibility. And for the first time in years, everything becomes possible. Daniel learned that freedom was never a gift. It was never something to be handed down. It was inside him all along. The moment he finally stopped waiting, everything shifted. And that shift is what separates people who remain stuck from people who eventually succeed. Because freedom is not found, it is claimed. It is built. It is fought for. No one is coming to save you. And that is the most liberating truth you will ever hear. Because once you realize it, you finally understand. The power to change your life has been in your hands all along, and you no longer need anyone else's permission to take it. Fear is heavy. It sits on your chest. It whispers doubts into your ears. It tells you why you shouldn't move, why you shouldn't risk, why you should wait. Daniel felt this every day. After realizing no one was coming to save him, he thought, I have to act, but I'm scared. And that fear was paralyzing. Because acting without fear is easy. Acting with fear is what actually changes your life. Daniel's first step wasn't huge. He didn't quit his job. He didn't start a business. He didn't invest all his money in something uncertain. He started by noticing. Noticing how he spent his time. Noticing what tasks drained him. Noticing which ideas excited him but he ignored. Awareness was small but powerful. Next, he decided to do one small action every day that scared him. One call he had been avoiding. One email he had been postponing. One idea he had been afraid to share. Every small action built confidence. Every small step proved to his mind that fear was not a stop sign. Daniel realized something shocking. The more he acted, the less fear controlled him. The less he waited, the more momentum he created. And the more momentum he created, the easier it became to take bigger risks. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Action is not glamorous. It's not exciting at first. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. It's full of mistakes, and that's exactly why it works. Daniel made mistakes. He failed in ways that felt embarrassing. He faced rejection. He faced uncertainty. But every failure taught him something. Every rejection pushed him to adjust. Every uncomfortable moment made him stronger. He also realized something important. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need perfect planning. You don't need guarantees. You just need the courage to start. And courage is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Daniel started building leverage. He didn't just trade hours for money anymore. He invested time in learning skills that multiplied his value. He sought opportunities that allowed him to earn even when he wasn't working. He made connections that expanded his options. Every small step created compounding results. Here's the truth most people never face. Fear never fully goes away. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't vanish. But action makes fear manageable. Action turns fear into a guide, not a jailer. Daniel began to see patterns in his thinking. Whenever he felt fear, it wasn't just about risk. It was about growth. Fear was signaling that he was moving beyond old limits. And that's when he understood. Comfort and safety never lead to freedom. Fear and discomfort do. This chapter is not about reckless action. It's about intentional action, small steps, daily discipline, courage in manageable doses. Daniel realized he had been waiting for perfect conditions, perfect timing, perfect clarity. But perfect conditions never arrive. Life rewards action, not preparation. Life rewards courage, not comfort. Life rewards movement, not waiting. By the end of this chapter, Daniel had started changing his habits. He spoke up more. He invested in himself. He explored opportunities without certainty. He learned to treat fear as a signal, not a stop sign. And slowly, momentum replaced hesitation. Momentum replaced fear. Momentum replaced waiting. The lesson is clear. You don't need to feel fearless to start. You don't need perfect timing to begin. You don't need anyone to approve your decisions. Daniel had started taking action. He had faced fear. He had stopped waiting for someone else to save him. But something still felt missing. Even with courage and action, his financial life wasn't transforming as fast as he wanted. That's when he realized the problem wasn't effort. It wasn't opportunity. It wasn't luck. It was his mindset, the way he thought about money. Most people think money is external, that it comes from jobs, from bosses, from opportunities. Daniel had believed this too. He worked hard. He did everything right. And yet money slipped away. Why? Because he thought of money as something to manage, not something to grow. He thought of it as a resource to survive, not a tool to create freedom. And that is the trap most people fall into. They treat money like it's finite, like it's fragile, like it must be hoarded or avoided. This kind of thinking feels responsible. It feels practical. It feels like adulthood. But in reality, it quietly keeps people broke. Daniel started noticing his own beliefs. I can't invest. It's too risky. People like me don't get rich. I'll never understand business. I should save, not spend. Every belief reinforced scarcity. Every belief limited possibility. Every belief kept him trapped in a cycle of survival. He realized wealth wasn't just about earning more. It was about thinking differently, about seeing money as energy, as a tool to create leverage, as something that could work for him, instead of him always working for it. And that shift was terrifying, because it meant questioning everything he had been taught, everything he had believed about responsibility, about safety, about what smart people do. But once he embraced this shift, everything began to change. Daniel started small. He began studying wealth creation, not just budgeting or saving, but understanding how rich people think about money. He noticed patterns. Rich people don't just work hard. They build systems. They create value that multiplies. They leverage resources, time, and other people's skills. They see money as a tool, not a measure of self-worth. Daniel began to challenge his old beliefs. Instead of thinking, "I can't afford it," he asked, "How can I make this happen?" Instead of fearing risk, he asked, "What's the smallest step I can take to test this?" Instead of believing scarcity, he asked, "Where can abundance exist if I think differently?" Every question opened doors. Every answer created opportunity. And slowly, his financial reality began to respond. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You cannot earn your way out of poor thinking. You cannot work hard enough to fix the beliefs that keep you broke. Changing your life begins in your mind. And that's why most people never escape, because they refuse to examine what they truly believe about money. Daniel also realized another pattern. Most people fear money for the wrong reasons. They think it will change them. They think it will corrupt them. They think it will make them greedy or selfish. But money doesn't change a person. It amplifies what is already inside. If you are fearful, money will amplify fear. If you are responsible, money will amplify responsibility. If you are creative, money will amplify creativity. That's why mindset is everything. Daniel started replacing limiting beliefs with empowering ones. Instead of, "I can't do this," he said, "I am learning how." Instead of, "Money is dangerous," he said, "Money is energy I can direct." Instead of, "People like me don't get rich," he said, "I can create my own path." And it wasn't easy. Beliefs don't change overnight. Old patterns fight back. Fear resurfaces. Doubt sneaks in. But action backed up the new thinking. Every step Daniel took to learn, create, and invest reinforced his new mindset. Every small win, even minor ones, proved that change was possible. The most important shift Daniel realized was his relationship with money itself. Money stopped being a scoreboard of success. It stopped being a source of fear. It became a tool for freedom. And once that happened, opportunities multiplied. Ideas that once seemed impossible became doable. Risks that once paralyzed him became calculated. Growth that once felt distant became inevitable. Here's the truth most people never learn. You can earn more, save more, and work harder. But if your mindset is unchanged, you will remain in the same cycle. Change starts with thought. Thought creates action. Action creates results. Daniel realized that breaking free from poor thinking is the ultimate leverage. Because effort without the right mindset is wasted effort. And resources without the right mindset are wasted resources. By the end of this chapter, Daniel had learned 3 core principles. Money is a tool, not a threat. Abundance starts in the mind, not the bank. Your beliefs dictate your results more than your work ever will. And with these principles, the next chapter would take him further, into the ways he could start building wealth intentionally, systematically, and without fear. Because knowing is one thing, doing is another. And the mind is the bridge between the two. Daniel used to believe that big change required big moves, a new job, a big investment, a sudden breakthrough. But real life didn't work that way. Real change began quietly. It began with small decisions that felt almost boring at first. Once Daniel understood his mindset, he faced a new problem. Knowing what to do is easy. Doing it consistently is hard. So he stopped chasing dramatic transformations and focused on one question. What is the smallest decision I can make today that my future self will thank me for? That question changed everything. Daniel didn't quit his job. He didn't gamble his savings. He didn't announce his plans to anyone. He simply started paying attention. He noticed where his money went. Not with guilt, not with shame, just awareness. For the first time, he saw patterns. Money leaked out in small, invisible ways. Subscriptions he forgot about, impulse spending to escape stress, convenience purchases that felt harmless but added up. None of it ruined him. But all of it slowed him down. Daniel realized something important. Wealth is not destroyed by one big mistake. It is quietly drained by thousands of small, unconscious ones. So he made his first system. Nothing complicated. Just a simple rule. If I don't understand where my money is going, I don't control my life. He started tracking not obsessively, just honestly. And something surprising happened. He felt calmer. Not richer, not powerful, just calmer. Because clarity removes anxiety. Next came another small decision. Daniel stopped reacting emotionally to money. Before, money controlled his mood. More money meant relief. Less money meant panic. Now, he treated money like information. Numbers stopped being personal. They became feedback. This shift mattered more than he expected. When money is emotional, decisions are impulsive. When money is neutral, decisions are strategic. Daniel also changed how he spent. He stopped asking, "Do I want this?" and started asking, "Does this move me forward?" Not everything had to be productive, but everything had to be intentional. That single filter saved him more than any budgeting app ever could. Then came the hardest part. Delayed gratification. Daniel had always known the idea, but now he felt its weight. Every time he chose not to spend, he wasn't denying himself. He was choosing his future. That reframe mattered. Sacrifice feels painful. Choice feels empowering. Daniel wasn't punishing himself. He was training himself. Another small decision followed. He began learning every day. Not random motivation. Not hype. Practical learning. How money works. How systems are built. How value is created. Just 30 minutes a day. No rush. No pressure. Consistency beat intensity. Weeks passed. Then months. Nothing dramatic happened. And that's exactly why it worked. Most people quit because change feels invisible at first. Daniel kept going because he understood this. The early phase of growth is silent. Roots grow before branches. Then something subtle shifted. He started thinking differently in conversations. He noticed opportunities others ignored. He asked better questions. Not because he was smarter, because he was more aware. Daniel also stopped waiting for perfect timing. He used to delay action, thinking he needed more knowledge. More confidence, more money. Now he acted small and learned fast. Test. Adjust. Repeat. No ego. No rush. This mindset reduced fear, because fear feeds on uncertainty. Action creates clarity. One of the biggest changes came in how Daniel defined success. Before, success meant more money. Now, success meant control. Control over time. Control over choices. Control over direction. Money became a tool to support that control, not the goal itself. And strangely, once money stopped being the goal, it started growing. Not instantly, but steadily. Daniel also learned when to say no. No to distractions. No to comparison. No to advice from people who were stuck themselves. He protected his focus like it mattered. Because it did. Focus compounds faster than money. Here's what Daniel finally understood. Most people want results without identity change. They want wealth without discipline, freedom without responsibility, growth without discomfort. It doesn't work that way. Daniel wasn't chasing money anymore. He was becoming the kind of person money responds to. Calm, patient, strategic, self-aware. And that identity shift made everything easier. By the end of this chapter, Daniel wasn't rich, but he was no longer lost. He had direction, systems, clarity. And that is more powerful than motivation, because motivation fades, systems stay. This chapter isn't about perfection, it's about momentum, small decisions, repeated daily, quietly shaping a future most people never reach. He thought changing his thinking would only affect money. He didn't realize it would affect people. At first, nothing seemed different. Same friends, same family, same conversations. But slowly, tension appeared. Not arguments, not fights, silence. When Daniel talked about learning, people joked. When he talked about plans, people changed the topic. When he said no to things he used to say yes to, people felt it. And that confused him. He wasn't judging anyone. He wasn't acting superior. He wasn't trying to change others. He was just changing himself. But that alone was enough to make people uncomfortable. Here's a truth most people never tell you. When you grow, you become a mirror, and not everyone likes what they see. Daniel noticed something painful. The same people who once complained about money didn't want to hear solutions. They liked the complaint. They liked the shared frustration. They liked feeling stuck together. Growth broke that agreement. Daniel wasn't better than them, but he was no longer the same, and sameness is what keeps groups comfortable. At first, Daniel tried to explain himself. He softened his words. He minimized his goals. He laughed things off. But it drained him, because shrinking yourself to keep others comfortable is a quiet form of self-betrayal. Daniel had to face a hard question. Do I want approval or do I want progress? You can't fully have both. This doesn't mean abandoning people. It means understanding boundaries. Some people can grow with you. Some people can't. Some people won't. And that's not cruelty. That's reality. Daniel stopped trying to convince anyone. He stopped seeking validation. He stopped oversharing his plans. He let his actions speak quietly. Something else happened too. New conversations entered his life. People who asked better questions. People who listened. People who didn't mock ambition. Not many, but enough. Daniel learned another important lesson. Your environment doesn't have to change all at once. It just has to stop pulling you backward. Even one supportive voice can outweigh 10 discouraging ones. Daniel also learned to forgive. Not loudly, not dramatically, internally. He forgave people for not understanding him, because he realized something. They weren't against his growth. They were protecting their comfort. Most resistance comes from fear, not hate. That understanding removed anger, and anger is expensive. Now Daniel moved differently. He listened more. He reacted less. He stayed grounded. He didn't need permission anymore. Growth became quieter, stronger, more internal, and with that came confidence. Not loud confidence. Calm confidence, the kind that doesn't argue, doesn't explain, doesn't seek applause, just moves forward. By the end of this chapter, Daniel understood. Outgrowing people hurts, but outgrowing yourself hurts more. And staying the same to avoid discomfort is the fastest way to stay stuck. This chapter isn't about loneliness. It's about alignment. Who you walk with matters, but who you become matters more. In the next chapter, Daniel will face his final internal shift. Not money, not people identity. Because the moment you truly change who you believe you are, everything else has no choice but to follow. Daniel used to think change was something you did. Now he realized change was something you became. This chapter wasn't about money at all. It was about identity. For most of his life, Daniel saw himself a certain way. Responsible, careful, average. Not because it was true, but because it was familiar. And familiarity is powerful. Your identity is the story you repeat about yourself, until your brain stops questioning it. Daniel's old identity said things like, I'm not the kind of person who takes risks. I'm not good with money. I'm just trying to survive. Those sentences shaped every decision he made. No matter how many strategies he learned, his identity would always pull him back. So he stopped asking, what should I do? And started asking, who do I need to become? That question was uncomfortable, because becoming someone new means letting the old version die. Not dramatically, quietly. Daniel started practicing something simple. Every time he faced a decision, he asked, what would the person I'm becoming choose here? Not the scared version, not the rushed version, not the version trying to please everyone, the future version. At first it felt fake, but repetition creates belief. He noticed small shifts. He spoke more clearly. He delayed reactions. He stopped over-explaining himself. Not because he was confident yet, but because he was practicing being confident. Most people wait to feel ready. Daniel acted first, and slowly readiness followed. Another realization hit him hard. Your identity is shaped by your standards, what you tolerate, what you ignore, what you excuse. Daniel raised his standards quietly. He stopped tolerating chaos in his finances. He stopped excusing laziness in himself. He stopped ignoring his intuition. Raising standards didn't make life easier. It made life clearer. Clarity reduces self-doubt. Daniel also changed how he talked to himself. Before, his inner voice was harsh, critical, defeated. Now it was honest but supportive. Not positive lies. Truthful encouragement. You can figure this out. This discomfort means growth. You don't need to rush. That voice became his anchor. Then came the biggest shift. Daniel stopped needing proof from the outside. He didn't need praise. He didn't need quick results. He didn't need validation. He trusted the process because he trusted who he was becoming. This is where most people quit, right before identity solidifies. because the results lag behind the decision. But Daniel stayed. Not perfectly, but consistently. And consistency builds identity faster than motivation ever could. By the end of this chapter, Daniel understood something deeply. Money follows identity. Freedom follows identity. Peace follows identity. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of who you believe you are. And once that belief changes, everything else rearranges itself. Daniel didn't wake up one day feeling victorious. There was no dramatic moment. No announcement. No finish line. What he felt instead was quiet. A calm he had never known before. For most of his life, Daniel had been chasing something. Money, stability, approval, relief. And chasing always felt exhausting. Now he wasn't chasing anymore. He was moving. There's a difference. Chasing comes from lack. Movement comes from direction. Daniel still worked. He still planned. He still improved. But the pressure was gone. Because pressure comes from trying to prove something. And Daniel no longer needed to prove anything. He understood that life doesn't reward desperation. It responds to alignment. When your actions match who you are becoming, things start to flow with less resistance. Daniel stopped forcing outcomes. He focused on inputs. Daily habits, clear thinking, honest reflection. Some days were productive. Some days were slow. And both were okay. Because progress doesn't demand constant speed. It demands consistency. Daniel also learned to sit with uncertainty. Before, uncertainty scared him. Now it felt normal. He realized something powerful. Uncertainty isn't danger. It's space. Space to grow. Space to adjust. Space to evolve. The need to control everything had kept him anxious. Letting go gave him peace. Another shift happened quietly. Daniel stopped comparing his journey. No timelines, no races, no pressure to catch up. Comparison had once made him impatient. Now it felt irrelevant. Because he wasn't trying to be ahead of others. He was trying to be aligned with himself. Money continued to grow. Slowly. Naturally. But more importantly, so did confidence. Not loud confidence. Not showy confidence. Inner confidence. The kind that doesn't panic during setbacks. The kind that doesn't get arrogant during wins. Daniel also learned to rest. Not escape. Not numb. Real rest. Rest without guilt. Because rest isn't laziness. It's maintenance. Burnout had once felt like a badge of honor. Now it felt unnecessary. Sustainable growth became the goal. Daniel wasn't trying to make it. He was building a life he didn't need to escape from. That changed everything. One evening, Daniel looked back. Not with regret. Not with pride. With understanding. He realized his old self wasn't weak, just unaware. And awareness changed everything. This audiobook was never about money. Money was the mirror. It showed fear, beliefs, identity. Once those shifted, money followed. Naturally. If there's one truth Daniel would leave behind, it's this. You don't change your life by fighting it. You change your life by understanding yourself. Poor thinking doesn't disappear overnight. It loses power through awareness. Freedom doesn't arrive suddenly. It builds quietly. And the most powerful changes often feel boring from the outside, but peaceful on the inside. Daniel didn't become someone else. He became more himself. Clear, calm, intentional. And that was enough. This isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning of a different way of walking it. No rush, no noise, no chasing. Just forward. Before this ends, take a second. If this audiobook made you pause, if even one thought here felt uncomfortably true, then this wasn't random. It means you're ready to see things differently. And if you don't want to lose this clarity, don't let this be the last time you hear this voice. Like this audiobook, so this message reaches more people who need it. Subscribe to this channel, because this is not a one-time conversation. This is a journey of thinking differently. Share this with one person, just one, who works hard, stays responsible, but still feels stuck. And if something here hit you personally, drop a comment below. Not for others, for yourself. Because writing a thought makes it real. More chapters are coming. More truths will be uncovered. And this is only the beginning. No motivation, no fake positivity, just real thinking, real growth. Stay aware, stay intentional, and I'll see you in the next one.